Hello again, Shannon once more. I'm on my second video of our mini loom and I'm ready to show you how to weave. So you want to cut a length of your warp thread. So I like to do 2 to 3 yards and I recommend doing that to start, and then you can see what length of warp thread you are most comfortable with and makes the most sense for you. So you have 2 different needles in your kit. One is a metal needle and one is a wooden needle. Either of these will work, and it's really just personal preference as to which one you might prefer to use. And so if I have a really long piece of yarn, I want to make sure that I don't have to pull too hard. So I have a nice long tail, and then I can just move where my tail is, where my yarn is anchored on my needle as I weave. So what I'm going to do for this set of videos is mostly talk about how to finish. So you have smooth edges. If you want to make a little bit of fringe, then you want to use what's called the hem stitch. And I do have other videos showing the hem stitch. It's a little harder on this teensy weensy loom because you don't have a lot of space, but the hem stitch is the stitch that I recommend using for the bookmark loom, which is kind of this loom's big sibling. So what we're going to try to do is just kind of weave as much of this square as we want, right? So we're going to start by weaving nice and close to the bottom, and then we're going to weave up until it's the size we want. I'm working on a little project in a cousin to this color, actually. I'm going to make 5 of the same size of squares, and I'm going to sew them together to make the cutest box you've ever seen. So I will be posting about that when I finish it. But for this one, I'm just going to demonstrate how you weave. So you take whatever hand feels the most comfortable, left or right, and you just take your needle. And I like to always start going under that first stitch. And so I'm going under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and over. So do you see how I have gone every other warp thread? I've gone either over or under. And then I'm going to pull my needle through until I just have a small tail. And then I'm going to take my little comb and I'm going to push my weft down. I want to push it as close to the teeth as possible for this specific way to do it without pushing so hard that I pop my warp loop or my warp threads off of the teeth. Because we started at the top and ended at the top, we have an even number of warp threads, which means that we are doing the same pass no matter which way we go. So because we have groups of 2, basically, when we do over under this way, we'll also be able to do over under this way, because as we're weaving, we want to do the opposite of what we did before. So as you can see, I ended with an over. As I work this way, I ended with an over. So now I'm going under because I want to wrap completely around that warp thread. And then because I went under this one, I want to go over the next one. And so here I go with under, over, all the way across. And I will say for this project, you don't have to count. I mean, it's not many, but you don't have to count how many warp threads you do. You just know that if you start at the top and end at the top, you have an even number. So as we're doing, the first row is a little different. We're just pushing straight to the bottom. As we're doing our subsequent passes, as we start building our fabric, we want to give a little bit of extra yarn, extra weft into our weaving, because we don't want our weaving to pull on the edges of our warp. So what I mean by that is I like to give a little bow like this. So I don't pull my warp straight across before I start using my comb to beat my warp. That's what it's called, beating. So what I'm going to do is I'm still kind of pushing down. I don't want to have a big loop on the edge where I have gone around the warp thread, and I also don't want it to pull taut. So adjust as you need to before you make your next pass. And so I feel really happy with where I am on my side, and I have pushed my weft threads down and compressed them. And now I'm going to work on my next pass. And so again, we're going to ignore our little tail that's just hanging. And again, I have ended by going over. So now I'm going under. So I'm going under, over, under, over, under, over, all the way across. And then I'm going to pull my weft through like so. I'm going to leave a little bit of a bow here, as you can see. I'm going to pick up my comb. I'm going to compress my weft. It feels a little loose over here, so I can just tug really gently to pull my weft a little bit more. And once we are out of the kind of structure of the loom and we're just on our weave, it'll be a little bit easier to use our comb and compress. As you can see, I don't have to be weaving. I don't have to be performing my over under close to where I'm going to be finishing. I can do it up top or in the center of my loom even. And just as long as when I pull my thread through, I've got everything closer to the bottom, I'm all good. So weaving is very meditative and fun. And it's also, especially as you're getting started with it, it's a lot of fussing and tugging and beating and pushing and pulling. So what I would also remind you as we're doing this is to make sure before you make your next pass, you've got your previous pass and weft and all that jazz exactly how you want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and push it down a little. I'm going to tug. I always have to kind of fuss a little bit, especially if I'm using a yarn that's a little different than what I've used before. I feel like my little warp thread here is getting a little bit loose. And we talked in the last video about how we do that little surgeon's knot, but then we might want to go in and tighten. And so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to shove my tail through. These are just anchoring knots up here, so they don't have to be pretty or anything. So I'm just going to do a little knot just to kind of tug everything, and then I can keep going. And so this is weaving right here in a nutshell, just going, going, going until you have as much fabric as you want to have. I like to compress pretty tightly. I don't necessarily, for this kind of a weave, I don't necessarily want to be able to see my warp threads poking through when I'm doing this. It's more of a weft facing, where what I see are the weft threads, and that's what these all are, as you can see. Yeah, so just keep doing that. And the next video will show you how to finish our piece.